The Why Me Project, an exclusive presentation of Faith Strong Today.
I will say this, Holly, and I've said this before, I get excited about the guests that we have, but I think that this week it is a huge part of my youth growing up, because I think without Christian hip hop, I don't know where I would have been with my love of music, with radio, Christian radio, because I think in some ways Christian hip hop saved my life.
Yeah, for you, it really did play a huge role. For me, it didn't.
Yeah.
And it was more of the Avalon. I think they're actually my second CD was Avalon.
You got it. It was a tape back then. Don't throw out the word
No. Amy Grant was the tape. Avalon was a CD. It was cutting edge.
We're dating ourselves, but
I know.
I'm super excited to talk with film director and writer and producer, among probably other things. Darius West, my friend, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be here. Glad to have the opportunity to speak with you guys and be a part of this Why Me project.
We're going to talk a lot of hip hop, especially Christian hip hop, because you have a project that you have finished. It's phenomenal. And I can't wait to dive into all of that. But we want to ask our skill testing question, Darius, because we never know where it's going to go. And that is, who are you and where did you come from?
I'm Darius West. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, originally, by way of Tulsa, Oklahoma, then San Diego, and grew up in the South. Most of my family on my mom's side and my dad's side actually is in the South. And so I love that's my root. So I'm always going to be Southern, even though I'm in California. How
old were you when you moved from Carolinas to Tulsa?
I was 14.
Oh, that's a hard time to move in your life.
Yeah. It was a tremendous culture shock. I remember, I grew up in a not so great area. But I remember when I got on the school bus to go to school, first year of high school, there was no graffiti on the walls. The seats were clean. it was kind of like, wait, I'm not used to this. I'm used to the graffiti and, people's tagging stuff when the bus driver is making a right or a left. That's when you can get up and tag and, the seats, and we're in the back the bus, playing Uno with nickels, so that was kind of like my childhood. So coming to Tulsa was a tremendous culture shock. Yes.
No kidding.
Why the move?
Well, my mom had a vision to go to Oral Roberts University, so she packed up her little blue Chevy Cavalier and drove across country with me and my older brother, and the rest is history.
So Tulsa, she went for an education.
Yes,
that's incredible.
Yeah, she already went. I remember her graduating from college when I was 5 years old. She had graduated from Johnson C. Smith University at HBCU in Charlotte. And, but she wanted to get her master's in teaching. And so, God led her to, Oral Roberts University. And, now she's back in Charlotte and she's been teaching for, close to 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Wow. So, Mike dropped the documentary in which has now officially dropped. And I do want to dive into a whole bunch of that, but I want to start from the beginning as to where did Christian hip hop and your life come into play? Because I was a teenager, as I was mentioning, I'd listen to the likes of Ice Cube or a Jay-Z, and Holly and I will mention this at least once a month. I remember walking into a Christian bookstore and it said, if you like this artist, you would like this artist. And it was, God's original gangsters. And I was like, well, let's give that a try. And that's where I fell in love with kind of getting away from the secular to the Christian hip hop. Where did that for you come into play?
1988. We had moved to Tulsa in 1988. I got introduced to Stephen Wiley's music because Stephen Wiley was based out of Tulsa. So that next summer, I ended up going back home to Charlotte for the summer and started rapping. I was rapping at that summer camp that we would normally go to every summer. It was a Christian summer camp, and I was rapping. So I started really early in the game in terms of, diving into this, back then it was just called Christian rap, but hip hop then kind of tag on to later. So getting back to Tulsa, I think probably around 90, 91, me and my good friend, we've been friends for over 40 years now. We started a Christian rap group. We was at Tulsa, Oklahoma, in Higher Dimensions, Carlton Pearson's church at the time. One of the only churches I know at the time that allowed young people to really express themselves, musically, rap, dance. A lot of what I've done and the foundation of where I am now started at Higher Dimensions. And so me meeting Carmen, started at Higher Dimensions because Carmen saw us actually rap. You guys catch me at a great time because I've actually been reading my journals. I've been keeping journals since 1990. So a great part of my life is on paper. So I'm reading a lot of these experiences all over again from 1990, 91, 93, 96, 97. So, just in my journals, talking about the production that we did in 1990 or 91, and Carmen coming to us after the performance at church and say, "Hey, can you guys come teach me how to dance?" And so at 16 years old, I'm in Carmen's house teaching them dance moves, So, a lot of my foundation and where God had led me started at Higher Dimensions, and the rest is history from.
Oh, I love that so much. It's funny because when you said Carmen, I'm thinking like the AC singer Carmen. This goes to show
Yeah.
It's a good thing we don't do a lot of video. I would lose my black
Carmen
card.
Licadello, just to be clear. Licadello. Yeah. And actually back to the question about Christian hip hop, I've been taking pictures of my journal entries and sending it to all these guys, Noel and Robert, Robbie from, D2, Soup, ETW, PID Fred Lynch, because I spent time with a lot of these guys in the early 90s. Because we all had the same manager at the time, because it was still small. It was a very, very small group of people, early 91, 92. And so, PID would come into town. They're administrative Higher Dimensions with the youth, and we'll open up for them there. Dynamite Twins and Soup came through with a, little tour. We opened up for them there. So I was around a lot of these guys even back then. I sent them these entries like, "Oh my God, this is crazy. I still got this." It was like, I was like, yeah, I was just a teenager. I was just sharing my experience on paper. But, 30 something years later, I didn't know that God would use that moment to, bring us all back together to do this film.
Because for those who don't realize, though, I mean, we're talking late 80s, early 90s. There really wasn't anything where youth could express themselves. If you were dancing in church, it was of the devil. If you were listening to certain kind of music, if it had drums or a beat, we're all going to hell. This was a completely different time than where we are now.
Yes, definitely. And that speaks to, even the dance part, because when we started rapping, part of what we did in dance, because in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, there's a podcast that Will Smith does with DJ Jack Jeffs called Class of 88. And so all the Salt and Peppers and Slick Ricks and, all EPMD and all those guys came out around that time. And so that kind of fed into the movement for the 90s, right? And so dance was a big part of hip hop at that time, right? So we made it a part of what we did with DMT. And so, once we went our separate ways, my partner, he went to the Army, and at this time I was a freshman in college at ORU. I was like, it was just me then. Then I began to focus more on my dance, because that's the thing that a lot of doors were opening for me. And so, but, we started a Christian dance ministry, at dance ministry at Higher Dimensions that, was called Steps of Praise, probably one of the only ministries in the world at that time, because there were people from other nations doing our dances because they saw us perform on the stage at Azusa. So we'll get a lot of testimonies from places like Africa and places like people are doing your choreography. But because it was something that wasn't, nobody was doing it. And Carlton at the time, late 80s, early 90s, were always called the backdoor evangelism. And so because even though he didn't understand it, he knew it was relevant for the young people who were coming up.
And now you got Mic Drop. Maybe there'll be a book that comes out.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Oh, look at this. Oh, I love that, because it's one of those things where if I was to go back and read my journal, I just journal when I'm frustrated. So I wouldn't be able to have a clear picture of going through those moments like you have. And it has been quite a journey for hip hop music. And when I was younger, I grew up in a smaller, mainly white culture kind of community. And it was so hard to find music that I could relate to. And so it's really interesting just to see how it went from, the 80s, the 90s, and now how it's so much more mainstream, and it's just able to reach people in a really just like a tangible, different
way.
kind of way, right?
Yeah.
And it's just,
Yeah.
I love that it has played such a huge role in people's faith, like Johnny, which is funny because he knows way more about hip hop culture than I do.
Right.
Hands down, hands down.
White guy. Well, I mean, but we talked to John Rubin a few years ago, and that's why like a John Rubin or a KJ52 was so important to me because it was a white guy. I heard black culture and all that, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Things that I never understood.
Yes.
But I would hear about it. So I watched the evolution of hip hop on like Netflix, and I was like, oh, there needs to be a Christian one of these. At what point did you think, oh, this is what we need to do, and you created Mic Drop?
I was just finishing film school in LA, 2013, 2014. I moved to San Diego to go to film school in LA. And my good friend and big brother in life and in the industry, Michael Anthony Taylor, who's the executive producer, call him Mookie. Known him since, 88. We all grew up together in the youth at Higher Dimensions. And so we toured together with Carmen. We did a lot of things together. He produced a lot of the music that we did back then with our rap. And so we've always stayed in contact. So he reached out to me because he was a really big music documentary buff. So he watched everything in terms of documentary. And you talking about this is 2013, 2014, documentaries wasn't even a thing then, right? Yeah. So it's not even. And so when he said, hey man, we need to do this, you work with a lot of these guys. I work with, matter of fact, I read a journal entry the other day where PID was going to produce our first album. It was crazy like that. I said that to Fred, like, dude, I said, it must have happened because I wrote it down. I don't remember it, but it is written history. But, so it was about us seeing, he did the research. He looked and said, man, and there's nothing really out there for this. And let's make this happen. So I would have to attribute the idea to him because when he approached it to me, I wasn't really into documentaries. I was like, I'm all about film. Right. And so I had the liberty to do this in such a way where it didn't feel just like it was a documentary. I wanted to bring more youthful experience to it as well with the concert and just, use my editing and my creative chops to really not make it feel like it's just interview, B-roll, but I wanted to bring a more live experience to the documentary, something that I would want to sit down and watch, right?
Because there's so many different ways to tell a story. And as a creative, it's so much about you and putting it out there. As Mic Drop is out there, how is it for you seeing people's responses to it and just their takeaways from it?
It's amazing. You never know, the response, this is, my debut, and like I said, it wasn't my first choice in terms of just what I want to do. But when it came to my place, we have to do this, we have to do it right. The response globally has been pretty overwhelming. We're getting messages and emails from Russia, from Italy, from Brazil, from Australia, New Zealand. People are like, how can we get it here? People in Russia like, can we get it here? Can somehow, Brazil, because they speak Portuguese there. And so our distribution company, distribution deals with Warner Music Group. And so they're only required to do Dutch, Spanish, and English. So Portuguese wasn't a part of the package. So now they're working on see how they can put it in Portuguese. So people in Brazil can see it and things like that. So it's been it's only been a month and a half since it's been out, and just seeing that just over the holidays, people still captivated by the impact of it globally.
Is it easier or more difficult, do you think, to do a documentary as to like the starting point? Because Stephen Wiley was kind of like the beginning of, so it's kind of like you had a starting point somewhere, but to then mold and mesh it all through, did you kind of have the idea as to how you wanted it to look?
Yeah, I was, I pretty much, started flying, just traveling, and whoever would do an interview, I just went, right? It was very, one of the executive, label executives at that time that I interviewed, people told me in the industry and around the circles of people say, this guy would never, take this interview because he's an atheist now. He doesn't believe in God. It was just the whole thing. And, a lot of times when you hear that, it's always based upon church hurt more than anything. So, but I reached out. I did my research, found out where he worked and, called his work and they give me his email. And I was just like, yo, I'm going to get this interview. So I got the interview. Actually, he emailed me back. And at the time he was like in Washington, Seattle area. And I said, hey, I'll be on a plane tomorrow. I'll meet you at your hotel room. We're going to do this interview. So, hey, man, let's do it. So it was basically, it was like, how you get the interview? I just asked, because I wasn't there. So to me, it's just really, I just wanted to get people's story. And once I'm able to look at the footage, I can really kind of figure out how I want the flow to be, and along with the concert that we shot in 2016.
Yeah, because that was kind of my thing was there certain must-haves that you had to have in this? Because like you said, there are those now who don't have a faith or people who might not be, with us any longer, that they're like, oh, I need to get so-and-so in order to make this thing work.
Yeah. Stephen Wiley was my first interview, January 2015. So I knew, of course, I had to have that one. Mike Peace, I had to have him. My brother lived in Syracuse at the time, and Mike Peace was just north of there in Buffalo. So reached out to him, said I'm flying to Syracuse, and we're gonna do an interview at my brother's church. Church he attends. Hey, I'm there. So it was PID, Dynamic Twins. I had to have PID. I had to have Diamond to Soup, of course, SFC. I really wanted to get KJ5 too. He was one of the earlier interviews I did get as well. And mainly also the executives from every label, the top three that were brainstorm, forefront, and frontline. Those are the main three that was really, pushing at that time. So I said, I have to have these people. And there's other individuals that we felt we wanted, but once we got the stories from the people that were there with him, even though they didn't respond to several, attempts, it was like, okay, we're good. We have what we need and we can move forward from there.
I find when you are creating something and it's going to have impact, there's inevitably obstacles and hurdles that feel insurmountable during this process. What were some of those things that you had experienced that maybe even threatened to stop production? There
was a production that actually stopped just a month before the concert in Dallas. Investors involved, of course. And we had built this thing up in Dallas to really do, because the whole vision for that is, Adrian Butler is my god brother. I've known him since he was 5. And I have been watching a lot of his stuff on YouTube around 2015, 2016. And I said, I want the energy of this generation to be in this documentary, because we can talk about the pioneers but we have to bridge the gap. We have to show that this is still, we have to show what Fred Lynch talked about. This is what we dreamed about 30 years ago. Show what's happening 30 years after he had said that, right? And so that was the mission of that. So production for that got shut down a month before. We didn't know if we were going to get the money, and everything. But, miraculously, God worked it out to where, within a month or so, we were in Dallas and we're shooting that concert. So it's, it's been a lot of those moments where, you just have to, have faith in God and trust God. Because my skill and expertise was in production and post-production. This, for me, was really learning about the business of working with people and trying to get things done with the distribution company, with investors and licensing and all that comes with it. Yeah.
That's a huge learning curve. It's a lot.
Yes. Well, and I mean, think about it. If you were interviewing Steve in 2015 and you didn't release it until 2020, I mean, that's 8 years. Like that's 8 years of, is this ever going to get done? Are we ever going to be able to see this? Is this ever going to get to the big screen?
Yes. Oh, yes. Right? It's been a lot of conversations, a lot of thoughts about that, because, we thought it was supposed to come out in 2020, then, 2020 happened. So.
Yeah. I love how no one has to say it. Like, then 2020 happened.
Yeah. Oh, that thing.
Oh, yeah. That was a downer.
Yeah. But, one thing we learned very, very much through this process, understanding the timing of God, because it was supposed to come out in 2020, because 2020 was actually when the push or the recognition of this film was actually going to come out, because we released the trailer April 2020, and on the weekend was doing our PR company at the time. I said, let's just put the trailer out there, see what it does over the weekend, and release it like Friday. Monday was up to like 25,000 views. It was like, wait, hold up, this is bigger than we thought, and so that actually, because people were home, no one they couldn't go nowhere. So people were sharing. And so it became really an opportunity for the film to get recognized and people to start following it. And then we use that momentum to, continue to do premieres and concerts until it's time for the release.
You talk about the things that surprised you. I think looking back on some of the stories that you hear, the roadblocks that a lot of these artists would face, the racism that a lot of these artists would face, was there a surprise to you or something that you learned yourself when doing this documentary, maybe that you had no idea?
I think more so about the death of D-Boy, because there was always a mystery behind that, like what really happened. And having the opportunity to, interview Tim Miner at the time. I didn't know him personally, but now, we're good friends. But actually being there for him to say on camera for the first time, because he hadn't talked about it in 20-something years. That's why he broke down on camera. We had to kind of shut it down from there. But finding out what really happened when, how D-Boy passed. Because when everybody heard it on the radio, it was like, he's gone, like what happened, right? And so, not knowing, the car accident and him shot and just everything that went along with his passing, that to me was like, man, that was very a revelation in terms of what was happening and what had happened to kind of give people clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Before Holly asks her skill testing question, because we both get one an episode. I want to talk about faith though, because we talk about Christian hip hop, we talk about you, we talk about faith. When did faith come into play in your life?
Oh man, 5.
Okay, so it's been around for a while.
Yeah. My mom said I was 5, so that's out there.
Yeah, there you go. Mama knows.
Yeah.
Oh, so you're 5 and Jesus is now in your life. Was there a point though where like it became more about like that childlike faith into something that was a little bit more tried, tested, and true?
Yeah. Like I said, I don't remember the being led to Christ at 5. I do remember being baptized in the Holy Spirit at 8. That confirmed that I was saved at 5. Right. And so I remember that because, Old Country Church down in Charlotte, being baptized in water, coming out speaking in tongues at 8 years old. At that moment, it became 10. I've known that for all my life. It didn't become something surreal to me until I had my own kids and realized, wait, my daughter's 8. I was this age, so that's what it really get like, yo, that's really young, right? So. That's when it really became tangible for me with my relationship with Christ.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Well, skill testing question number 2. Why me moment? Whether it was in a valley or mountaintop of life, have you ever experienced a moment where you just said, why me?
Many times, but pertaining to this documentary, the question more so was when we found out from Rapzilla, and it was confirmed later that there had been at least 12 different attempts to do a documentary about Christian hip hop. The question to me at that moment was like, why me? Right? What makes me so special for us to really complete something? And we also had that back or pushback from other people, gatekeepers in a sense, like, why y'all got to do it? How come we can't do it? It's kind of like that,
Yeah.
And so you kind of felt that, you kind of got that from, particular artists, I would say, in the industry who are doing their thing now. But for me, one of the things that I've learned, and just by, knowing what I wrote in my journals, so many years ago, I've known since I was 19 what I was supposed to do. I've known since 18 what God showed me how I was going to start. And I didn't know at 18 he was talking about this film, because at the time I was just a dancer, and just the details of it. I really can't get onto it, but because there's certain prominent people in the vision that he gave me that 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 had to pass. Really, so when my drop was released, November, there were people who had passed just a few days later. They were connected to what God showed me in the vision at 18. So a year ago, God told me that my drop will be the door that opens up every door to my destiny. But this is something he told me when I was 18, but he didn't talk about the film. And so that why me became more of he chose me as opposed to why me. And so that's why we were able to do what we did, because God had already predestined for me to do it.
And what's amazing about that is that the 18, 19, and I mean, this is years later, it's you're standing, anytime, waiting for, you came at 18, 19, where we at?
Yeah. Many times.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about that for a second? Because I hear a lot of people who feel that they're really frustrated right now and things feel like, it's the worst it's ever been, because we take a look at the news and social media and everything feels horrible. And we're like, God, when? Your timing really isn't very good. I don't know if anyone's told you that, God.
Yeah.
So how have you been able to navigate that, I guess, that posture of patience? And I'm going to say long suffering, because if God gives you a dream and it doesn't come right away, like there's an element of, I want to do this now. How have you been able to work through your life knowing that vision and just not knowing when or what that was going to look like?
For me, because I teach on vision, purpose, and timing a lot, for me, it boils down to seasons and asking God in every season, what's the purpose for this season in my life? Because when you receive vision from God at 18, he showed me visually when it was going to start. At 19, he showed me visually what it was actually going to become. And so, but in knowing that, it's kind of like, seeing a vision from afar off, right? You see target a mile away. You can only see the sign. You can't see details of what God is showing you until you continue to walk toward what he has shown you. And so that is the journey of life, is that God always shows you something far off, and you can only see maybe one thing, which is the big sign, but you don't really know the details of what God is saying until you walk out this course of life, which I call the process, to get you there. And a lot of times people skip the process. They jump in the car or they tag along with someone else and get there quicker than they haven't been refined for the moment. Because one of the things that I've learned, and Dr. Miles Monroe was my spiritual mentor. He told me, he said, when the curtains open, you got to know your lines, because the curtains, that moment in time will open. And if you don't know your lines, you're going to be stuck because your character and your integrity is not there. So, I live my life based upon one statement. My aunt told me, she's with God now. She said, the greater the purpose, the longer the process. And so when you look at what God has shown you, and it's something that's grand, David was a teenager when he was anointed to be king, but he didn't become king till many years later. Joseph was 17 when he had his first dream. He got into position when he was 30. So it's going to take years for processing based upon what God's called you to, because I know where God has called me to, and I know basically how many years it's going to take to do what God's called me to from this point moving on. Is just a sense of patience in knowing that God, in his timing, knows what he's doing, and I'm just along for the ride and to be obedient to him.
I love that, because we're in such an instant society right now. You can get whatever you want, wherever, like in a flash.
Right.
And we've lost maybe a little bit of that practice of being able just to wait with anticipation. And we're just like, clarity now, God, I want clarity. He's like, just simmer, just simmer a bit.
Yeah. If God would have showed me what's happening now when I was 18, I wouldn't have believed it. Because I wouldn't be able to sing. I was a dancer. What did I know about media or anything? It wouldn't make that sense to me.
Yeah, it's not clarity we need. It's just patience.
Yes, we need patience.
Yeah.
That's good. The The greater the purpose, the longer the process. It took from 2015 to just released a few months ago. MikeDropTheMovie.com at Darius West on the Insta. From Roger Rabbiting and Running Man to a documentary. My friend, this has been incredible. Thank you for taking some time and sharing your heart.
Man, I appreciate this. Thank you.
I think maybe one of the greatest things of our youth is the fact that we have that poster to relate to. If you like this band, you will like this band.
Seriously. It helped me a lot just navigate the Christian music world. Now, again, as we've already talked about, when he's talking Carmen, I'm thinking, Carmen. Yeah. 'Cause that was my influence growing up. And those, like, if you like this and you like that, it actually exposed me to music that I was curious about, because it was always like the full list of all the genres. But then there's like that point too where it became a little cheesy. We're like, really?
Oh, yeah. And not accurate.
Yeah. Not accurate at all.
Not at all.
Like, who wrote these lists?
Yeah. They sing English, so let's just put their name in there. In all honesty, I would almost do anything right now to get one of those posters.
Yes.
Just so that I can have it for reference to show my kids. Guys, before there was the internet, before there was this list that you would figure out if you like DC Talk, you also like this band.
Exactly. Well, it was the other way around. It was like, if you like Nirvana, you will love this group.
You like DC. I think that was actually one of the comparisons.
Probably.
But I mean, to hear the history of, and that's where I love it. Talking with Kirk Franklin late last year, and I mean, we talk about those who paved the way for people.
Yeah.
And to hear of where Christian hip hop came from and where it is now, and how you would never hear it on the radio to now you hear it, or you hear the likes of a Toby Mac who was never going to be on radio. It's just, to me, that's what warms my heart, is to see where we came from to where we are.
Yeah. I think there was a group called On Fire.
Sure.
And they had this song called Dance Like David.
Okay. This sounds like something you would listen to.
I cannot find anything of theirs anywhere. Like, once tapes ended, like, that's it. So if I can, like, somehow secure a copy of that, I would be really excited.
All right, there's our goals for 2024. You want some obscure tape, and I want a poster.
I want to find it so I can play it to you, because I think you would just be you would shake your head. You'd be like,
I
oh,
want to hear this.
Oh, Holly.
There's nothing else in my life right now that I don't want to hear more than whatever that is.
I was going to sing it to you, but no. No one needs to hear that.
Oh, no. Hold on. If you remember what it is.
Of course I did. That was my jam.
Can you throw out a little bit, please?
Lyrically, it was like, dance like David. Dance like David.
No. You're not giving it enough. I need to...
Nope. That's all she wrote.
All right. If you want to hear more of this song, make sure that you like and subscribe. You follow us on all the socials, whether it be Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, the YouTube. And if we can get enough likes and subscribes, Holly will not only sing it, she will do the dance moves.
Someone will call the doctor thinking I'm having a seizure.
She threw her hip out.
I am too old. I have a 10 and an almost 8-year-old. We are not dancing like David. No.
Oh, Lord. Please make this happen. Check out us, all the socials at faithstrongtoday.com.